Army Special Operations vet Alex Plitsas, I'll get it. He joins me now. Look, this is an horrific story. How do you think Israel will respond to the murder of those two little boys?
Well, it's a blatant violation of the agreement that was stated with Shiri Bibas's body not being returned. So that in itself is a violation. And then we found out this morning from the IDF that the two boys, ages 4 and 9 months, were killed with the bare hands of terrorists.
Beaten to death by terrorists?
Beaten or choked. It came back from the IDF this morning, and they said it was released at the request of the fathers, that the world knew what savagery his children were subjected to.
Reading between the lines, I can understand how Israel and Netanyahu are really angered to an extreme degree. You think they'll go back into Gaza?
I think there's a very good possibility. Tomorrow's release, if it goes as planned, with six living hostages left, that's the end for phase one. And afterwards is the remaining balance, the hostages. And then if Hamas gives them up, they have no more leverage. So Hamas is...
I'm going to just stop you for a second.
Yeah, please.
There's only 6 living hostages left?
In phase one of the deal, the final
remaining. In phase one?
Yes.
But are there other living hostages?
There are other living hostages left, but it's the end of Hamas's leverage. So they would have to be willing to give them up, and they continue to violate terms of the deal. And this was by far the most profoundly stupid thing that they could have done. These two innocent children and their mother have galvanized the Israeli public. And not only do they not give the mother's body back, but then they beat the children to death with their bare hands. What kind of savages do something like that?
They cannot be allowed to remain in Gaza.
There's no way.
Hamas must go.
There's no way Hamas can be allowed to remain. I mean, I watched the video of the 10/7 attack. It's about 45 minutes long. I've seen the ISIS and the Al-Qaeda videos from when I was at the Pentagon, and the difference was the Hamas members in the videos enjoyed what they were doing, and they were celebrating, whereas with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, as gross it was serious business. That's indoctrinated sociopathy. Like, you can't fix that.
I'm going to change the subject for a second, Alex. I want to talk about the war in Ukraine. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, he says Trump is frustrated with Zelensky. Watch this.
Look, President Trump is obviously very frustrated right now with President Zelensky. The fact that that he hasn't come to the table, that he hasn't been willing to take this opportunity that we have offered. I think he eventually will get to that point, and I hope so very quickly. But President Trump is, as we made clear to our Russian counterparts, and I want to make clear today, he's focused on stopping the fighting and moving forward. And we could argue all day long about what's happened in the past.
Now, Mike Waltz is referring there to Trump's offer to buy Ukraine's minerals, 50% of the minerals. Zelensky turned it down. We now hear that there's another offer on the table, and Zelensky's aides are saying, hey, take it. They don't want to rustle up Trump any longer. What do you make of the relationship?
I think there's been a difference of opinion going into the approach. So I think from Zelensky's opinion that the United States and Ukraine should be on the same page before negotiating with the Russians. Putin has said that he does not want the Ukrainians at the table yet. President Trump has said, I'm going to speak to Putin and see what we can do to structure an agreement. So there seems to be a back and forth. And Mike Waltz's comments today and yesterday were plain. Look, let's stop with the rhetoric. Let's get back to the table and get to an agreement. And that's what they're trying to push for.
By the sound of it, you think an agreement is possible?
I don't think there's really a choice. We're running out of men, material, and equipment. You know, I do defense manufacturing during the day in the space, enterprise systems, and I got to tell you, we've had to do a 12x increase in some weapon systems to meet the demand between Ukraine and Israel, and it's not a sustainable fight both for Ukraine or Russia at this point. It has to come to a stop. There's simply no other way.
What kind of weapons, if may I ask?
Sure, by all means.
What are you working on?
So, for example, the 155 artillery shells that are in the supply chain, it's our main howitzer rounds. We had to borrow as a nation, I think, 300,000 at one point rounds from Israel, which ended up getting sent back as the war, and we had to borrow another 500,000 rounds from South Korea. So the German company that manufactures them in Europe, the CEO was the guy that was on the hit list for Putin because he's the one ramping up to like 75, 80,000 rounds a month. And the U.S. has had to do the same. The defense industrial base has had to scale. And now you've got Europe taking primary security. So everybody's going to have to rebuild to not only pre-war levels, but then a 3 to 5% budget increase. So that type of manufacturing isn't sustainable in the long term right now. And the defense industry is trying to respond. So they're out of men as well. I mean, 1 million dead on both sides. You can't continue.
Alex Plitsas, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Stu.